Welcome back to Ferocious Education. This is Zed. Today we're going to be talking about ITRM, Iterum Therapeutics. Haven't done this one before. I take my recommendations off Twitter and off Discord, so make sure to actually follow me there and join our free chat room. Make sure to drop a like to this video to help the channel grow, subscribe, and leave notifications on. Let's jump right into this one. So first off, I'm going to cover here due diligence and then technical analysis. On the due diligence part, what we can quickly go ahead is to look into their presentations. Their presentation is submitted out recently, and it does have a good amount of information. So for instance, the first thing is unique proven lead assets, which is the sulopenem, an oral and IV penem antibiotic licensed from Pfizer. Oral sulopenem achieved the primary endpoint of statistical superiority to kyproplaxin, a leading treatment for UTI in the US in patients with quinolone non-susceptible infections in a recent phase 3 UUT trial. Now, oral formulation has potential patent protection up until 2034. That is 2029 plus extension, and they also find for new patents, and if it's granted, they'll get an extension until 2039. QDIDP status granted to oral and IV formulation for targeted indications, including UTI. That's a 10-year market upon exclusive approval. Now, QIDP status granted for 4 additional indications, including community-acquired bacterial phenomena, pneumonia, CABP. Now, for large commercial opportunities, what we get to see is that an immediately addressable potential U.S. market with 6.5 million infections annually, and that is 22 million total UTI infections per year in the broader U.S. market. It's a multi-drug resistance in UTIs, in an alarmingly high and still growing on, and that has potential as well to be the first branded antibiotic for UTI in over 20 years. Flexibility to treat infections across broad patients population, numerous outpatients, inpatient settings. Now, addressable key unmet needs including avoidance of treatment failure in the community and reducing hospital length of stay. Modest field organization located in high resistance and high volume areas. So that's amazing. Now, the NDA accepted in Q3 2021. That's for the PDUFA date. That's a massive PR coming up. And 3 phase 3 trials has been completed and 3 indications under the Special Protocol Assessment SPAs with FDA. Uncomplicated urinary tract infections, UTI, complicated urinary tract infections, CUTI, and complicated intra-abdominal infections, CIAI. Now, CPA specified primary endpoint missed the CUTI and UUTI non-inferiority trials due to asymptomatic bacteria. Now, this one here missed the endpoint, but no significant safety issues noted with the oral IV. Now, it missed the endpoint by 1 patient. Just keep that in mind. By January 2021, NDA accepted for review for oral sulopenem for treatment of uncomplicated urinary infections UTI in patients with quinolone non-susceptible pathogens. PDUFA dated July 25th, 2021 with a plant advisory committee likely in Q2 2021. Now that in bolded is very important, especially for the PR dates. I hope I didn't bore you yet, but let's just march a little bit forward a little bit. That gives us a lot of information. Here comes in a bit of explanation on some of that information, including the numbers based on 2017, based on zip code there. You get to see a bit of heat maps, and as well as the efficacy and safety concerns with existing antibiotics related to all these antibiotic classes as well. Things look generally fine. Now, the completed phase 3 study designs, that's over 3,700 patients enrolled and over 1,800 treated with sulopenem. Now, for here, you have for the UTI, the first one. Now, the FDA and EMA primary endpoint to cure at day 12, clinically and microbiological success. The CUTI, that was tested around almost 1,400 patients. That's the FDA and EMA primary endpoint. That's cure at day 21. And that was clinical and microbiological success, although EMA not supportive for penem. Now, CIAI, that was around just short of 700 patients. FDA and EMA primary endpoint, the cure was at day 28 for clinical success, and cure at 21 for EMA for clinical success with an NI margin of -12.5. So far, it looks good. Now, uncomplicated urinary infection for phase 3 trials. We have superiority showing up at 286 patients, which is good, and non-inferiority at 785 patients around here. Moving on forward. There is a large addressable market in the US. We already know that. And then a little bit here, this is where I'm interested in, is a little bit of a timeline for some of the PRs. So the first one is the sulopenem at the second half for 2021, which is potential NDA approval. Before there, you have the potential advisory committee. And then you have the NDA acceptance for this one here already. Now, the next thing here we have is, or we had previously, is the penem UTI phase 3 readout. So we've already done that a bit ago. Now, in the second half, you have for the UUTI for pivimicilinum that you got potential NDA filing, phase 3 planned on the second half of 2021 for CUTTI as well, and potential NDA filings for CUTI. Now, this goes as well PRs. The first half of 2022 looks a little bit quiet, but the second half of 2022 and beyond looks a little bit busy there. Now, the next things that we have here is in the US and Europe. The difference is that in Europe, what you have is data exclusivity that goes on between 2021, somewhere around there, to 2025. In US data exclusivity that already kicked in for somewhere around later on in 2020. And for the patents for sulopenem whatever it is, oral only, that US patent is all the way, as we mentioned, until 2029 with extension to 2035 and potentially even expanding to 2039. So we can go ahead as well, the expected milestone as well. We already have the NDA file acceptance. The next one would be potentially advisory committee in the second half of, or second quarter of 2021. So that kind of covers a little bit of information that we need for making an educated decision. Next is their offerings. So they had a recent offering that was around $10 million. They increased it to $40 million. So now they have $40 million. Another piece of information that we get as well to see is, as they previously announced, the FDA accepted for review the NDA for the product that we were just talking about, the oral sulopenem, for treatment of uncomplicated urinary tract infections. And so for that one, they're going to be collaborating with Eversana. And then the next thing that we have is, of course, the FDA NDA approval. So that we already know. Next is their participation in HC Wainwright BioConnect Virtual Conference. That's happening on January 11th at 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And they also have they announced that Dr. Michael Dune, which was the previous chief scientific officer of the company, effective December 21st. He resigned from there. And he has agreed to be there as a strategic advisor just to complete the company's pending NDA for oral sulopenem for treatment of uncomplicated urinary tract infections. Quarter results, I'm going to go through that in a second here. So through their financials, just to keep something in mind, they did have a few offerings before. So just from here till October, we already know about the $40 million. There's around 17.5 there as well. So coming in a little bit short off, well, let's say a bit more, 57.5 million, a little bit short of that because of expenses wise. That goes on towards their total assets. It increases their entire cash. So their current cash sitting right now is almost around 10 million. So it goes around 80, sorry, not 85, my bad. That goes around 40, 57, around, add 10 more, 67 million bucks. Their total debt is around $40 million. So they can actually officially be debt free and have enough cash to keep them afloat. Now, recently speaking, you get to see the total assets has decreased significantly from as we go, but they keep on raising capital through offerings and seems that they have no problem doing that. Total debt has been in fact actually increasing, especially from year on year when we're looking somewhere around 40 million from 13 million. That's insane. Now, quickly going on towards the revenues. We're just going to go on through the quarterly perspective. You get to see, well, of course, they are pre-revenue. Their net income, generally speaking, they've been a little bit still around negative 12 million, give or take. So that gives us a little bit in mind of what the company operations are going on. Some of the recent notable PRs in 2020 includes the Daily Biotech Pulse, Corivera faces FDA. Nope, that's not actually him. It's the second part. Iterum Antibiotics trial narrowly misses primary endpoint. That was actually a very negative point there for the company. The next is Iterum Therapeutics announces $52 million private placements with new and existing investors. Another offering, 17.5, another offering there as well. And this one here was the Iterum Therapeutics announces positive pre-NDA meeting with FDA for sulopenem for treatment of uncomplicated urinary tract infections. That was a positive thing as well. Now, I think the only one out of these ones that really made a hit was them missing the trial primary endpoint. I think that dropped it around, what was it, 30 something points? I can't remember. But just keep in mind that when this one actually drops, it sometimes drops really hard. Look at this news here, around 60% drop, and it reads, ITRM top-line results for phase 3 clinical trials of oral and IV sulopenem in complementary trial infections. And it doesn't look good. I mean, generally speaking, they've had their troubles here and there. So just keep that in mind. Now, moving on towards technical analysis. Before moving on towards technical analysis, please make sure to actually subscribe to this channel. It helps me a ton and boosts my level in the algorithms. Now, on a 1 week perspective, what we get to see for ITRM is that we're actually seeing a good movement on the MACD part. On the ADX, it suggests a very, very strong trend, and momentum looks quite healthy. Now, the William %R is a little bit on the borderline of overbought, and that's a little bit dangerous there, but the moving averages are fully bullish for the first time in what seems to be like forever. I think it was all the way back since June of 2019, so more than a year ago. Now, it's the first time ever it's been all bullish. Now, on a 1 day perspective, you get to see an MACD that's seeing a really nice reversal here. Momentum that looks to be like gone from negative towards positive, and that's a massive, huge difference. William %R shows to be a little bit on the borderline of overbought. The ADX here suggests that there is a potential for a trend forming. Now, the moving average bands are all bullish. Your trading action zone where positive reversals are likely is between 151 and 138. Your 50 SMA is above the 200 SMA, and your 10 SMA is above 30 MA. Lower number over bigger number, that's always bullish. Now, on a 2 hour perspective, here's where things can get a little bit interesting. Your MACD is saying there is a potential for a pullback here. Well, after you've hit from what has been 153 to 285, expect pullbacks. That's normal. Now, the next thing here is William %R, which looks to be a little bit around neutral, and momentum looks to be quite stable. Your trading action zone is between 221 and 179. The 50 SMA line is at 156. So far, it's quite bullish. Now, your trading action zone where positive reversals are likely is between 221 and 179. Keep that in mind. Now, moving averages, you get to see that this one is expected to trade between 166 on the top, 150 in the middle, and 135 in the bottom. Now, just a quick thing, this is the highest volume it has ever received. So just keep that in mind. There's a massive volume here, around 227 million. Last time that happened, which would be in this area here, the volume tanked the next day. And it still stabilized, but it really didn't really hold its value above that $2. So I need to be careful of is to check for volumes for the next day. I'll refer to this point again later on. Stochastic fast and stochastic slower, both showing there is another potential for a leg up. Fibonacci retracement shows a significant resistance at 258, 324, 389, 483, and 602. Significant supports is 177 and 45 cents. Now, going ahead to find a price line action, you get to see a significant support does lie at the 210 mark. Below there, you're looking at 173. Below there, a very strong one at 143. Below there, 121. Below there, you're looking at 83 cents and 60 cents. Significant resistances. There's only honestly a few at this point. You're probably looking somewhere around the 250 range. I'm going to go back a little bit down here. Yep, so the 250 range, that seems to be a significant resistance. 291. You're looking at 319. 383 to 399. 434. You're looking up at 488. Now, just a reminder, a significant support does sit somewhere around 227, and then down below around 207. Comes to the question 2. Ed, what do you think is going to happen with this one? Well, this is a good question. I do definitely think that you do have potential for the pipelines. If they actually pull through that phase 3, that will be amazing. It has histories of tanking really fast. It has some positive and negative histories. And you get to see, if we were to go back in a few years, it has histories where it spikes massively and drops massively. So the volatility on this one historically has been massive. Investing wise, I'm a little bit, not comfortable investing very much in pharmaceuticals generally, but it's definitely one of the pharmaceuticals that has potential. Now, the next thing, trading wise, there's no gap to fill. I mean, all gaps have been filled anyway. And you need to check on volume. If volume actually matches or starts to pouring in tomorrow, you can actually see a new high. But if volumes start dying, at least even you won't even find 1/3 of the previous volume, that's your warning sign. And that's where you can leave that position from there. That is my opinion. What do you think about this ticker? Make sure to mention down in the comments below. Share, subscribe, and like. You have a wonderful day.